Hey, what's up, White Knuckle Army? Welcome to the White Knuckle Podcast, episode number 14. Well, hey, everybody, thanks again for tuning in to the White Knuckle Podcast, episode number 14. Before we get too far into the podcast, I just want to take a minute to thank all of you for your support. Recently, our podcast has absolutely blown out of the water in terms of the numbers of downloads, and that's great. We appreciate everything. We appreciate you all sharing our podcast to all of your friends. That stuff does not go unnoticed, and it just absolutely inspires us to do an even better job than what we've done in the past. So with that said, a big thank you from Todd, myself, and the entire White Knuckle crew. We will be bringing you more exciting podcasts, more exciting web shows, and all that good stuff. But let's get to today's show. We had a contest on Facebook where we asked people to throw their hat in the ring to be a guest with Todd and I on one of our podcasts where they could pick either of our brains about any subject they wanted to, as long as it related to deer hunting or something relatively close to it. So today we're going to be joined by, of course, Mr. Todd Pringnitz, my esteemed co-host, and Scott Jansson and his son Connor. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we get a chance to chat with Scott and Connor Jansson. Well, welcome back to the White Knuckle Podcast. Today I am with my co-host Todd Pringnitz.
Woo!
What's up, Todd?
Not much, man. I'm frozen in Iowa, waiting to talk to Scott Jansson, one of our hardcore fans from over the years, and I'm glad that he was the one who got an opportunity to chat with you and I tonight. Scott, how are you doing, my friend?
Not bad. How about you guys?
Doing well.
I'm excited, man. It's been cold tonight and the last couple days, but I'm excited to get out doing some shed hunting. But number one thing is we're here to talk with Scott. Jason, you set this up not too long ago. Tell us how it happened.
Well, we just placed it out there on Facebook, and Scott was one of the ones that we randomly picked, one of the folks that we randomly picked to do a podcast with us and get to pry and prod on our brains on anything that is white knuckle hunting, etc. Now, Scott, as I understand it, you're joined by your 14-year-old son, Connor. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Hi, Connor. How are you?
Hey,
Good. How are you?
Good. Are you excited?
what's going on, Connor?
Not much.
Right on. Where are you guys? You guys are calling from Wisconsin, right?
Yeah.
Have you been out shed hunting or anything yet, Connor?
Yes. We haven't found anything yet, though.
Well, I've been there myself, my friend. So it sounds like you've got a cool dad who takes you out and does awesome things like deer hunting and shed hunting, and we're going to talk about all of that stuff here coming up in our show here. So, Jason, do you want to figure out how we're going to get this started?
Yeah. So what we're going to do is Scott has a list of questions. We've narrowed it down to 10 to 15 questions. We're going to go through those questions as quickly as we can, and then at the end, we're going to let Scott and Connor pick the two or three that they want Todd to elaborate on the most, and we'll let Todd go. And the reason that we did that is because Todd would talk forever otherwise. So,
dude, I could do a podcast on every question, and it would be like 2 hours long, but we just do not have enough time in the day.
If no one has figured this out yet, I don't really have a lot to add to the show other than to make sure that we stay on time.
It's tough to compete in the.
All right, and with that, Scott, what's your first question for Todd?
All right. First and foremost, where do you keep your horseshoe? No. On a serious note, though, I understand that it takes a lot of dedication to pull off year after year the kind of success that you've been achieving. How much time would you say you spend a week in the off season getting ready for the next year versus during the season?
That's an awesome question. And I could go on and on about this, but the short answer is probably on average about 10 to 15 hours a week of just blue collar, checking trail cameras, setting trail cameras, This time of year, I have corn piles that are going certain times of the year outside of hunting season, just setting trail camera stands, whatever. Just monitoring the property and staying on top of the animals. And then depending on different times of the year, like food plot time of season, tree stand season, sometimes I'll spend 30 plus hours a week on top of my regular job. We're going to get in some of those other areas later, but every day I'm doing something, whether it's for 15 minutes or for 4 hours. It just depends on the time of year.
Okay. That's a lot of dedication it takes, but to run a show like you guys. I try to tell my son that all the time. He kind of wants to do what you're doing, and
sure,
I'd love to see it happen, but he just needs to understand that there's a lot of dedication and time that it takes to do something like that.
Well, based on the other questions that we're going to be going through here and the quick short answers, he's going to get a real quick idea of the kind of commitment and the dedication and sacrifice it takes to do this stuff. So that's what we're here. That's what we're talking about. What's your next question, Scott?
Yeah. So where and how did your whole career start? Tell us a little bit about your humble beginnings.
Basically, what I would say was probably like one of the major points of my life was my neighbor, John Fisher, was a bow hunter. And when I was growing up, he was the next door neighbor, and he was about 10 years older than myself, but he was bow fishing and bow hunting and doing all the cool stuff. And this is around the time when in Michigan, Ted Nugent was like huge, man. He was like just becoming popular. It was like the year of Fred Bear and all that. And that was when I was like 12, 13 years old. So my dad wasn't a bow hunter. So John was the coolest dude in the world. He took me hunting up north. And I stayed in a little trailer, and that's how I became a bow hunting fanatic. Second major point in my life was when I was in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I went through junior high. I was always really good at art. I was one of the best art students. I just like thrived with it, but who's going to make a living doing art? Guy I worked with was in the CAD program through our local, it was, what do you call it? A tech center, Career Line Tech Center is where it was in West Michigan. And so I took a CAD program. That was another major point in my life when I started to learn how to use CAD and design stuff. Another major point was I got a job working in manufacturing. That was another major point in my life where I started to put all these different pieces of the puzzle together. When you're trying to, you like to hunt, you like to do all these different things, but there were so many different little skill sets that I learned along the way, either through pure attrition or just by luck of meeting the right people. But a lot of different things that came into me and how I began. And it would be that's probably going to be one of the topics we'll talk about in more detail later, because it's just too difficult to, answer short. But sure. A lot of different life experiences.
All right. What were some of the major hurdles that you had to overcome to get where you are today?
I would say the one of the biggest things, and I was just plain naive. I didn't come from a business family. I came from blue collar people who, basically worked for worked for people. And my dad always told me, the best thing you could do is get a good job with a 401k that matches, and have a retirement and think about your retirement. And for whatever reason, I was not wired like that. So for me, the biggest thing that has been an issue of being self-employed and doing your own thing is people not paying. When you're in the hunting industry and you're trying to get your foot in the door, most of the time you're getting paid from media, advertising, that kind of related stuff, and that's the first stuff that doesn't get paid. So not being paid is the most difficult part, and then just deceit. People taking advantage of you because you're a nice kid or a good guy and don't happen to come from a business background that would teach you those things. Business is very cutthroat, and sometimes I think in the hunting industry, because we all love it and it's passionate and they're deer and it's wonderful, it's easy to fall into a dream world that you are that's all fun and games. It's not. There's a lot of business and politics, and sometimes I think because it's your passion, sometimes it makes it more difficult. It really does. Okay.
What in your opinion is the major difference between you and all the other guys out there. Nowadays, it seems like everyone and their neighbor's got a GoPro camera hooked to the end of their pole. So, you know, they all think they're going to be the next big deal. But what do you think sets yourself apart versus all these other fly-by-night guys?
I think, honest to God, I think it just comes back to my passion for the whitetail deer. If it wasn't for that passion, you couldn't ask for a worse business model. I mean, like, than deer hunting and filming. There's very few people are successful doing it. And when I thought about doing it, I thought, well, there's nothing else I want to do, and there's nothing else I really see myself doing. So I did it, and thankfully I met the right people. But you've got to have a burning in your soul where you're not going to be told otherwise. And that's kind of, I've always had that from my family background and just my work ethic of kind of having that attitude. And I think it's just chemistry of, I don't care what anybody says. I'm going to do what I want to do. But before I got to that point, I had to go meet a lot of people and experience a lot of things to get to that point. But always having that undying nerve of saying, you know what, I believe in nothing and I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And I can definitely respect that answer. You know, every time you harvest or shoot or kill or whatever you want to say, a whitetail deer, I mean, just the emotion, the raw emotion that you show, just, you know, truly tells everybody out there that, you know, you're not just in it for the money or the, you know, the glory or that, you know, the airtime. You're definitely respecting that animal. So.
Oh, it's to be honest with you, Scott, the real reason my motivation to start White Knuckle in the first place was trying to share a story of my story with guys like yourself who are real hunters who love these animals and try to help people, because I was fortunate where I got to hunt with those guys. But okay, so maybe we save that for a second side note, because I think we could go on that for 27 hours.
Sure. All right. What kind of advice can you offer to somebody trying to start out at a young age who wants to video his outdoor experiences?
Well, we actually had a very great conversation, and we did a podcast with Ronnie Cuss Strickland, Mossy Oak, just earlier today, Jason and I. And how awesome was that, Jason?
That was a ton of fun. It was an enlightening experience, and as much as you think you're going to sit down and talk with this guy all about hunting, we end up talking about life more than we end up talking about hunting. Wouldn't you agree, Todd?
Oh my gosh. You just meet these guys. And I mean, just for the reason I brought it up is he's been hunting for, he said, I think over 40 years. So I'm 39 years old. So the guy's been hunting longer than I've been alive. And he's been in the industry with Mossy Oak and everything going back, you know, literally decades and decades. So I feel quite ridiculous that I'm the person on the phone answering questions after talking with Cuz. It's like, you try to pick up what you can along the way. But I think the number one thing is you got to have a passion for the outdoors. And when we were talking to Cuz, that's what brought the whole conversation about, was that I think there's a lot of younger guys who are out there trying to get into filming and trying to film their hunts and share their hunts. And my gosh, the technology that's available now, and for, you know, with your cell phones and just small, inexpensive cameras, you can go out and film. But I think where I was fortunate when I started out hunting when I was 12, I got to go through those experiences as a hunter without somebody sitting over my shoulder, without my dad being there. My dad wasn't a bow hunter, so I was thrown in a tree stand and, you know, thrown to the wolves, so to speak. And I think someday when I have a kid, that's what I want to do with them, is literally make them go out and hunt and find their way. Maybe not when they're very, very young out in the dark and stuff, but I think it's very important for anybody in the hunting industry to become a woodsman or a woodswoman, or at least be an outdoors person where you have that basic skill set to talk about. It's okay to go out and film all your stuff, but don't expect to be making a living from it. If it's a passion thing and you enjoy photography and you enjoy filming your experiences, I encourage you to do it. But I think a lot of people are trying to do it too young these days. You know, the first time I remember pulling back on a deer here and there with my bow or with a gun, I mean, I was beside myself. I can't imagine trying to do that and film those first experiences. I think best piece of advice is become a good hunter first and think about videography and telling your story later. And if I'm wrong, then prove me wrong and just do it.
That's some great advice. It sounds really, really familiar. Todd, when you're speed scouting for a run and gun setup, what are your primary signs you look for when looking for an area to set up in? What separates the good sign from this is definitely a big buck, great sign area?
Sure. Number one, if there's not deer in there, I don't want to be there. I mean, there should be, if there's a big dominant buck in any particular area, there's a reason why he's there. And during the rut, pre-rut, main rut, post-rut, it's all about the does. So I want to see hogzilla runs coming and going from food sources, that sort of thing, before I even go into the timber. So like, I ain't even going to concentrate on a section of timber unless I have trail camera intel like from the season. But if I'm going in blind, and I've done this many, many times, if I don't see deer sign, that's a bad sign. And I'll tell you what, during the rut, it doesn't necessarily, if you have huge giant buck sign all around you, that's wonderful. But I've killed bucks over the years in different areas, especially if it's more pressured areas, by focusing on where the does are, not necessarily where the buck sign is, because during the rut, it's all about where the does are. So number one is sign. If there aren't deer there, move on. You're not going to kill anything.
Okay. Each one of your partners brings something different to the table. How did you guys all meet, and how did you actually go about putting your team together? I mean, it seems like you guys are spread out all over.
Yeah, we have had, over the last 10 years, I don't even know how many guys we've had, probably 30 or 40 come and go, different guys. Most of them we've met through just how we're talking now, just as fans. Several of the guys we met at trade shows over the years. Some of the guys we met through friends who were existing team members. We've had guys leave that are now coming back. We've kind of seen it all, but generally just the passion for whitetails is what has kind of brought everybody together. And most of the guys that have come or gone or are on the team now, or ladies, are people who just believe in the project, believe in what we're trying to do as far as the deer are concerned. And I think it's pretty obvious when you watch our show. It's a little different. But the reason why it's different is because we try not to focus on us. It should be about the animal, and that's what I think kind of brings all of us together. And, we've got different guys that over the years I've been so proud to call our team members, Lucas Saigo, Ted Miller, Walter Easling, Steve Reindeers, guys all over Illinois, Derek Graham, Quinn, guys all over, and each one of them has left a piece of their soul with me, and have brought something to the table. But with that being said, it's just like any professional football team. As soon as somebody comes in that's really good, before you know it, they're going to have other opportunities or want to do things for themselves, and that's part of the business. So that's part you can't take personally either.
Yeah, and I understand it too. And what I've always said. A true hunter, a true outdoorsman, respects the animal probably more than the guys that are, and ladies that are protesting against hunting. I mean, we really love what we do. And we love the animals we're hunting. How much time? Go ahead.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, that's just, I think that's one thing that makes the hunting industry so strong is that we are all, we get it. We're not idiots.
Yeah. How much time in the off season do you spend at shows pushing your products and trying to grow your business? Do you have another job that you do off screen?
I've always had a secondary job, which has been usually doing product design, engineering, and or running Wicked Tree Gear, and I owned several companies before that, doing the same thing for other companies, basically product development. That was always my way of making a living, but my passion was doing white knuckle productions, and in the last 5 or 6 years doing Wicked Tree Gear. But I ground out the trade show circuit for, I think I'm on 12 years now or something like that. And before I even owned my own company, I was going and helping other guys do their trade show business. And that's how I built my niche in this industry, was by not only marketing, advertising through our DVDs or our webcasts, but being out there at the shows, standing toe to toe with millions of people. I mean, literally millions over the years. But trade shows are a critical aspect. It's very difficult to do, but that's one of my secrets to business has been just grinding it out. Trade show circuit is the cheapest way to get your product out there, sell product, and start your business.
That's actually where Connor and I first met you, down at the Deer Classic in Milwaukee or in West Bend.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
It's
Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead with your next question. I'm fine.
All right. You're wicked saw. First, let me tell you by saying that by far best saw for the money. I take it literally every time I go in the woods, regardless of what I'm doing. It's in my back pocket. How many hours in development do you think you had in perfecting that saw? And what gave you the idea of making it like a huge lock blade? That was a great idea.
Dude, it's not mine. It's been done a million times. Nobody perfected the composition, but I probably have, I thought about it long and hard today. I probably have between 1,000 and 1,500 between 1,000 and 1,500 hours of development design time in it.
Wow.
That doesn't include testing. I literally built a test. Everything was about this product was the blade. The blade was the toughest aspect of this because they're only made in a couple countries in the whole world. And I'm actually an importer, and I do product development and design with a ton of different suppliers all over the world. But these blades are not easy to get. And so I found the right supplier, and I built a test facility in my existing whitetail house here. It was in my kitchen at the time. I was unmarried, and I had a vise bolted to a great big wood table, and I would cut branches and bring them in the house because in the wintertime, when I was doing all my blade testing, it was so freaking cold out. I would bring everything in the kitchen, and I made everything very easy with cardboard so that when I was cutting in the kitchen, the wood chips and stuff would all fall into like a cardboard area. But that's how I developed the Wicked Tree Gear saw, was just they're cutting and cutting and cutting all these different materials, all these different types of woods, all the different hardnesses in just comparison. Blue collar engineering, reverse engineering, and that's how I found the right ingredients. And the design part's always been easy for me. It's just finding those simple. There's a few things that with each project that are always the headache, but that's what I do for a living. So that's the fun part, man.
That's how you develop a good relationship with your wife, too, dragging it all in the
house. You should talk to her now.
My God. Hey, I'm going to hand these questions over to Connor now. He'd like to read a few.
When you're planting a food plot, how do you determine what you're going to plant from year to year? Do you switch it up? Do certain plants attract more bucks versus does?
What I've learned here, at least on my farm in Iowa, and you guys are in Wisconsin, correct, Connor?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Do you guys currently plant food plots at all?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have some decent soil. You kind of know, you've got a little bit of information about where you're planting, what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. My number one, and this is what has come from 5 years of putting whatever it took into my food plots. With that being said, I'm doing it with an ATV and some Kuntz Engineering ATV plots and stuff. But what I've learned is keep it simple. There are a few green plots that I plant each year that are just always good. And it's clover, a mix of your rye, wheats, clovers, brassicas, that kind of stuff, and then you do typically like a turnip type plot in the fall. And instead of getting crazy, and I've gone both directions just to get my experience, but I would say generally simpler is better. Couple different varieties, and then just duplicate that across your farm or different properties for spring and or fall. And we can get into this for days, but simple is king. A couple good plots go a long way. You don't need a stupid amount of variety, but you want, if I could prefer anything, I'd go with a couple greens and a couple grains, either corn or beans or both.
Okay. Do you hunt the edges of fields, or do you hunt downwind side of them?
And I do both. And at the end of your question, there's some hinge cutting and some, manipulating your areas between yes, and no. I hunt field edges at the right time of year. And most often this is where I think a lot of people or thinking, I think differently is when I go hunt a field edge, I'm hunting that field edge that night for the possibility of hopefully, maybe killing a doe or a buck if I'm hunting a buck there. But when I'm hunting that, I know I'm walking out and leaving a scent trail. And when I'm coming out, I know I'm leaving a scent trail. So in my mind, I'm planning that I'm cutting off that area for at least this period of time with my human scent. So every move I make is always a chess move, and it might be to go after an animal, but I always am thinking in multiple ways on every hunt, which makes it impossible for us to talk about these topics for 30 seconds, right?
Okay. How many trail cameras do you hand in the area, and how often do you check them? Do you find that they spook some of your deer?
Yeah, we've used a variety of different trail cameras. Right now we're using Spartan cams, which have been kind of a cool new area of journey that I've been taking the last year. But in general, you want to have 2 to 3 different grades of your cameras. What I mean by your weekly checkers, your monthly checkers, and then I call them quarterlies or soakers, where you literally set a camera in an area up in a tree and you forget about it for 3 months. The ones that you're going to check often are going to be on typically like a mineral type setup. In Wisconsin, I don't know if you guys are allowed to use minerals, but you're going to put it on a field edge, easy areas to get to. And again, if I'm going and checking my trail camera, there's always a background reason for it. So I'm going to put my scent going in and out. So I will plan my hunts based on where my trail cameras are in the summer, so that if I'm putting scent in an area or putting an ATV noise in or a truck noise, I'm always thinking that I'm always going to do it in a way that I'm strategic about it. And if nothing else, it gives you something to do in the off season, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. From a bedding area, how would you pinpoint where those deer are going to travel next?
Mostly it's just through experience. If you find where generally, okay, we're all using trail cameras for the most part. So you start your beginning of your hunting season, let's say, and you're catching your bucks out on the field edges at dark with your trail cameras. In your past hunting experiences, you kind of know where the does are bedded. You kind of know where at least the bucks are. And if you don't, you're going to use your trail cameras in the off season, try to pinpoint. It's all about, if you're not figuring out where they are, then you need to be figuring out where they're not. And that's part of my whole strategy over all these years has been, it's a system of elimination. I do an onward push where, boy, if I have a big buck that I'm going after and that's the one animal I'm looking for, then I'll throw caution to the wind in all these different spots in the nearby areas where I'm eliminating, okay, is he over here in this doe batting area? Is he over here in this section for some reason? I'm going to I would rather be aggressive and put my foot in that area and know if he's there or not, and take the chance of blowing him out just to eliminate that area. But obviously earlier in the season, I'm not doing that. It just depends on the situation. But you got to think about it from that standpoint, that every move you make that's not successful is successful because you figured out where he's not.
Okay. What do you prefer to hunt in the morning? The back or middle of your woods, or the edge of the field where the most food is going to be?
Man, mornings have always been tough on me. I'm not a morning person. Jason can attest to that.
Jason's remaining silent.
I'm not. I hate mornings. I'm always uncomfortable. I get cold going in. I've had a lot less success in the mornings in general, but I know it's because I'm biased, and it's because I'm very impatient. I don't like to sit late in the mornings. And I think if you're a morning hunter, I think some of the best times that you can be sitting there is about 8:30 to 10:30 when most guys are moving around and leaving. That seems to be a time where mature deer want to move, or at first light. And man, I've been hunting first lights for a long time, and it just don't have very many good opportunities. But again, it's the way I'm wired. I'm a nighttime hunter, and I like to run and gun and go in after them at night when I can see. some guys are wired different and they don't sweat and they don't have any issues with the cold, and they'll go in the morning and they like to sit there all day. I can't do that. Like physically, I just can't do that. So part of what is awesome about bow hunting is you kind of figure out what you enjoy doing, and that's usually what you're going to be the best at. And then you figure out a way to adapt that or make that your own in your area. And then you throw in individual bucks and their personalities into the mix, and you can be busy for the rest of your life.
If I can just interject for a second and say, contrary to what Todd's saying, or not necessarily contrary, just conversely, I guess, David and I have found a lot of success with doing exactly what Todd said, and that's the 8:30 to 10:30. Mark Boardman and I Mark Boardman's from, he's a rep from Vortex Optics. We were out at the property that I hunt on this year, and it was, I can't recall the date, but it was in the teens in terms of the 13th, 14th of November, etc. And it was a cold morning, and it was one of those mornings, Todd, that you refer to, as it was, we were there at dark 30, etc. And we didn't see a deer until 10:30, or maybe 9:30, and from 9:30 till 11:30, it was just nuts. So there's definitely some value to sitting there later.
Yeah, and the other part of it, the reason why, there's a lot of different questions you guys have asked about the business and stuff like that. Everybody thinks like when October 1st comes that I get to check out and deer hunt. I'm sitting in my tree stand getting phone calls and voicemails and emails, and the more in the hunting season it goes, the worse it is, because that's when retail, it's where we're selling our product. And it's very similar to a lot of the guys who are in the hunting industry, maybe listening, they can relate. When everybody else wants to be out hunting, that's when the business is. So you're balancing all these different things. So about by 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm knowing I have to head home and do at least 4, 5, 6 hours worth of work so I can get out to my evening stands. So mentally, I'm not on the vacation mode that most guys have the week where they go hunting. I'm hunting every day right out of my backyard. So my patience and the way I hunt and my body, and I am way more adapted for doing a quick first morning hunt for information to find out if there's a buck that's going to cruise through there. If not, then I'm going to go back to work. I work all day, and then I make my evening set, and that's usually when I kill, because that's when I make my aggressive set, and that's when I put my time and my energy in. But, dude, by about 8:30 in the morning most mornings, I'm ready. I'm done. I'm cold, and I'm ready to go back and have a cup of coffee.
Well, I'll tell you what, Todd. All those phone calls, when you mentioned kids before, those are going to get replaced by about 35 to 40 texts saying, I'm not seeing anything. I'm cold. Can I come sit by you?
I will fit right in with the kids. I'll tell you, me and my wife were about on the same thing.
I actually shot my biggest buck to date this past year, and my son Connor here was probably about 50 yards away from me, and all morning long he's texting me. I'm not seeing it. And Todd, I'm telling you, and Jason, I'm seeing nice buck after nice buck after nice buck. I mean, it was just a morning that people dream about. In fact, earlier that morning, I actually missed about 160-inch 10. Got trail camera pictures of him, but needless to say, he comes walking in and standing underneath my stand as I'm letting the shot go.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
On the buck I shot this year. I mean, it was just, we call it the CJ sneak buck, Connor Jansson sneak buck.
Oh, my gosh. Well, congratulations, guys.
Nice.
Yeah.
How often do you guys hunt transitions?
Not often. I don't personally. I used to hunt kind of like what I think a lot of guys do, which is just during the rut hunting your pinch points, your funnels, trying to catch 1 or 2 or 3 different bucks. But over the years, I've been adapting more and more to hunting individual deer. And it can be kind of a pain in the neck sometimes, but I always go, to me, hunting a transition area is between a bedding area and a bedding area, or a major food source and a bedding area or whatever. those big bucks, man, in those areas that with us hunters, we go in there and we look at these spots and we're like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. It cuts down right here to 20, 30 yards. They have to come through here. They have to come through here, right? Especially around agriculture. And those bucks will not come through there. They will cut through the middle of the field in weird spots. They will do things that are just not common, and that's why they've made it to 5 or 6 years old. So I don't like to hunt any places that other guys want to hunt. I want to hunt spots that everybody else has overlooked, and that's why the deer are going to move through there. It's just a hard thing to find those spots, and they're in spots that you can access, and the bucks are killable there. But that's the secret. You got to quit hunting like other people. You got to quit hunting in those spots that everybody else wants to hunt. Hunt 100 yards downwind of them, 75 yards downwind, or in really steep ravines and crevasses. Anything no one else has thought about, that's where you'll kill them. And young Connor.
Yes.
You are in a perfect position for me to start to give you some ideas. You've learned a lot of stuff from your dad about hunting, and your dad will tell you everything that he knows. And what you need to start doing at your age is, well, hey, if what dad tells me, and if it's safety related or tree stand related or firearms or bow related, you listen to your father.
Hey, that's good advice.
Yeah, when it comes to that stuff. But sometimes, what made me a really good bow hunter when I was younger is my dad would say, well, go sit there. Well, that's the easy spot to go sit in, right? Now, I think your dad's a little bit more hardcore than my dad was, but part of what makes you a good hunter in the future is that your dad's getting you involved in all these cool conversations. You have to become your own hunter. And like every Indian used to send their young son out with a I don't know, did they use hand grenades back then to go kill a grizzly or something? But I mean, it's a kind of it's something you have to take upon yourself. And I think as a young man, that's the one thing, I think you're in a really great position because your dad's giving you that opportunity, but don't be afraid to do your own thing and maybe try some of your own ideas about deer hunting, because I'll tell you, some of the crazier ones that your dad's already thought of everything, right? Some of those crazy ones, that's when you can kill one of these big deer, because I've looked at Kyle more times than not filming these videos over the years. And I've looked at him and been like, if this works, nobody will believe it. And then that's when it happens. It's when you're doing stuff nobody else has thought to do.
Yeah. I got one more question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, buddy. I'm listening to you.
How early do you guys set up your trail cameras to pinpoint where those deer are going to be in the season?
We're usually running them all year, but if I was going to do it, if I had limited time, I would definitely start putting them in right as they go hardhorn, around September 1st, give or take. Up in your neck of the woods, you guys get to start hunting, I think mid-September, around the 18th, 19th, 20th, something like that. I would hit scrapes on the edges, put your cameras on your scrapes along the field edges to just find out what bucks are in the area. And then it's just a matter of trying to locate that individual animal you want to go after. And if you've got the luxury of time and strategic planning, use all these different tools and just try to figure out where they are. And, my rule of thumb, Connor, is I don't care what time of year it is. If I know where a buck is or I know where he's bedded, I will go after him, whether it's October 1st or whether it's January 21st. If you know where a big buck is, that's half the battle, but you've got to be strategic also. And, if you're hunting public land, you let nothing go. If you're hunting your family land or property or leases that, you control, you get to hunt all year and there's a lot of neighbors hunting around, then you got to be patient sometimes and just wait for the right opportunity. But a lot of times you just got to, I think, in general, most bow hunters just got to go for it a little bit more so than not, because you're going to learn from it. And that all that learning and experience, I think, because I didn't have anybody telling me not to do anything, I kind of just started doing my own thing and just going crazy. And I think that's part of the reason why I've been so successful over the years, is just because I didn't have anybody putting restrictions on me, and I kind of created my own way of doing things with a lot of good influences. And that's a huge thing, is You want to surround yourself with killers. You want to surround yourself with intelligent people who are good hunters. And, going to deer camp and having a good time with a bunch of friends is one thing. But if you want to become a great hunter, boy, you don't want to share camp with, a bunch of alcoholics that all they care about is drinking beer. You got to focus on the goal. So.
That reminds me of Peter.
Well, and I like to drink a little bit too myself. So, but you got to do what you enjoy doing. And if you enjoy going after an individual deer, like I'm all about it. And if you enjoy just being out there, I'm all about that too. Just depends on where you're at in your life.
Yeah, he's got one uncle that shows up the night before, and sometimes he makes it out for gun season, and, well, sometimes he doesn't. But for the most part, the rest of us are pretty hardcore.
Well, whatever you enjoy, and you know what? That's what makes awesome. That's what makes deer hunting awesome, is you get the chance to share camp and meet a lot of different folks. And that's one thing going to all these deer shows that we've been to over the years, man. Jason's been to a bunch of them with us. Like, you meet every character from every walk of life, from every economy, from dirt poor to millionaires. Everybody shares the same common goal, which does make it a heck of a lot of fun.
Very cool. That's all we got, guys.
So, out of the questions that Todd answered, are there any more that you want him to elaborate on?
What do you think, Connor?
I don't know.
Do you have any that you want him to spend an hour and a half on? Or?
And they don't think they're too silly. I mean, anything you want.
I got nothing.
Sure. Todd, why don't you go ahead?
Oh, I was just going to tell Connor, I will leave him with a lesson that I've learned from the time I was his age till now, and it rings very true, is don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, and none of this is glamorous. So I will never ask anyone or any of my employees to ever do anything I won't do myself, and that means I clean all the toilets and I sweep the floors, and there's nothing glamorous about this life, about traveling and hunting and doing all that. It's just a lot of work, but if you work hard enough, you find you have the right parents. I had great parents and a great upbringing that allowed me to have the opportunity to do some of these things. So take advantage of them and work hard, and you can do whatever you want to do.
Well, it's like, I've told him time and time again, if you're the best at what you do, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're the best, you'll do very well for yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, Jason is a great example. I met Jason 9 or 10 years ago, and we've been friends, and he's been filming with us. And Jason does sales of every kind of car that you've ever imagined your whole life, from high end to low. And he is the most killer hunter, salesman. Like, the best hunters usually are very successful in life as well. And so part of the reason why Jason's my partner in this, but most of the guys that you see and who are killing big deer year after year, they're very successful in life because they have that work ethic. And that's what it comes down to, is it's not fancy. It's not easy, but it just takes a lot of hard work. And all you got to do is have that mentality where, just don't give up and always finish what you say you're going to do. You'll do great.
There's one common theme that comes up consistently every time we do a Facebook Live show where we're fielding questions from guests or we're doing a podcast. And I think Todd would agree, Connor, is that the one common theme is that, and you've all heard me say it before, you've got to do the work. And it's the little things that make the biggest difference. You can't do 90% of the job. You can't do 99% of the job. You got to do 100% of the job, because it's the little things that you don't do that turn out to be big things that cost you big. Would you agree with that, Todd?
Oh my gosh, yes. And Connor, take accounting classes and as many business classes as you can possibly pack into your curriculum, because I'll tell you, that's the one area that I wish I would have had more experience in. I'm an engineer, very smart and very technical and all this crap. But when it comes to business accounting, today, I'll do 40 or 50 hours worth of tax work in the next month. Like, you want to go into business? Learn how to do taxes. That's half your battle. Learn how to deal with attorneys, contracts. It's never ending, but that's one of my secrets is over the years, I've done all my taxes for years and I just have a very simple accountant where I pay, whatever. But like that stuff nobody thinks about, but like you've got to be smart all the way across the board if you're going to make it. I'm not fortunate enough to come from a family that has a lot of money. We're blue collar. I had to earn everything. So if you come from the same type of family, you're going to have to learn how to do everything. And you might not become an expert at it, but you still have to learn how to do it. So just remember, man, learn how to work hard, Connor. Don't be afraid of anything. And when you have to do something like your taxes, figure out how to do it. And that will be something that you bring with you for the rest of your life.
That's great advice, guys. It's kind of funny. I'm sitting here with a smug look on my face, and he's over there laughing because he hears this every day from me.
Well, that's good. That's good.
It's the same crap. My dad used to tell me that I always used to have a smug face on my face, and it'd be like, yeah, whatever. And now I'm like, oh man, I used to hate to be like my father, and now I'm so appreciative of everything I am of my father. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
One other thing that we talked about today when we talked with Mr. Strickland was something that I recently talked with Gene Wenzel about, and it's one of the things that he said, and then Cuz Strickland happened to mention it again, and it's something that the Wenzels must say often. And I've just got to look back at my notes here. I think I know it by heart, but it's not the how, it's not the where, it's not the when that's nearly as important as the why. And the why you're out there. In Connor, don't ever forget why you're out there, because I think as soon as you lose sight of that, I think Todd would agree with that. As soon as you lose sight of why you're out there, and that's to have fun, to enjoy everything that God's given us, and as soon as you lose sight of that, you're not going to have fun, and it's going to be a chore. It's not going to be something you enjoy. So don't ever forget the why.
Amen to that. And Connor's got a much different. We could talk about Facebook for days, but just to end it, I would say his generation, Connor, your generation has a much more difficult task than ours did, because you've got a lot more going against you from the technology side, a lot more of distractions, things to get you out of what's being a human being, which is to be out hunting and fishing and surviving. And the further away we get from that, the more violence you'll see, the more corruption you'll see, the more horrible things that you see going on in our country, because we are animals and we need to put that energy someplace. We need to be out hunting. We need to be fishing. We need to be cutting wood. We need to be doing those things. That's what's built into our blood. And as soon as you start eliminating that, we're going to find ways to put that energy elsewhere. So, Connor, because we did this interview with you, you have to promise us that you will not join the Blood or the Crips gang.
I promise you.
In Little Chute, Wisconsin?
Or the Packers. We do not like the Packers.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yeah. I'm a big Detroit Lions fan.
We're really not football. We watch hockey.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm a Detroit fan there, too, so you'd really hate me across the board pretty much. But anyway.
Oh, I like Detroit. Red Wings rock.
The Packers will not win. The Detroit Lions are going to come back. And I just would like to leave it there.
Keep dreaming.
Hey, Detroit just picked up TJ Lang.
Oh, did they? They need to pick up a whole lot of luck, I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
And maybe Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, too.
Well, I think that pretty well closes out our show, unless you guys have a final question for Todd.
No, I think we're pretty good. I just really appreciate the opportunity, and I really want to thank you guys for relaying basically the same thing I've been telling Connor, all this time, and really putting that positive spin on things. I appreciate that. I think the knucklehead over here's got something he wants to say, though. He's kind of jumping up and down.
Go for it.
The guy who sold almost every car, he's saying, has he ever sold a GTR?
Yes. Yes, I have.
Oh my God,
I've sold.
That's my favorite car.
Well,
it's hard to compete with cars, Jason.
It is hard to compete with cars. Listen, I've been in the car business for 26 years, so I've been around a lot of different cars, and I've had the good fortune to work in several different dealerships. But yes, I've had the privilege of selling 2 GTRs. I actually drove one time, and didn't get a speeding ticket and survived the entire incident. Not without being scared, but yes, I have.
Well, it sounds like you have a potential intern up there in Wisconsin, Jason.
That's great. Well, there's lots of car dealerships in the valley.
Well, cool, guys. Well, hey, I wish you the best of luck this shed season and turkey season, and just do us a big favor and keep us posted on how you guys are doing on our Facebook page. And feel free to shoot myself or Jason a call anytime to get caught up, and maybe someday we can redo this.
Absolutely, that'd be great.
And Connor, just good luck and kick butt and work hard. All right, buddy. Listen to what your dad has to say.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, you two take care, and God bless.
All right, thank you.
God bless. Thanks, buddy.
Well, there you have it, our conversation with Scott and Connor Jansson. That was a ton of fun, guys. We appreciate you coming on the show, and we look forward to doing a few more of these over the course of the rest of the year. We're releasing this episode just on the backside of the Wisconsin Deer and Turkey Expo, and on behalf of White Knuckle Productions, I just want to thank Ozonics for inviting us into their booth to help out for the weekend. I know it maybe sounds odd that I'm thanking them for inviting us to come and work, but it truly was a great experience. David and I got to meet a ton of great people, and honestly, we met a ton of Ozonics fans. I was not surprised at the amount of people that walked up to that booth and raved about Ozonics. That said, we also got to watch JD and Cole help a lot of people figure out how to better use the Ozonics tools that they have. It was neat to see that, and we'll put some of that to use our own selves. So thanks again to those guys. Thanks again to Ozonics for having the foresight to spend the money to have a booth at a show like that, just to help educate the consumers on their product. With that, I think we'll close out the show for today. Thanks again for listening. Again, if you haven't done a review, we absolutely need more reviews on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever the case may be. If you're listening to this via Facebook and you've clicked on that link on Facebook, do us a favor and go ahead and share it with your friends. For those of you who listen on iDevices, go ahead and grab your device. Go to the iTunes store, search for White Knuckle Podcast, download the podcast app that's produced by Apple, and then subscribe to our show. And after listening to the show, you'll want to do a review, of course. Every time that I produce a show, you will get it downloaded right to your device. For Android listeners, please download the Stitcher app. That will do the exact same thing as the Apple app. Those of you who don't have a mobile device, you can always listen to the show directly by clicking on the audio file that is listed there on Facebook or any of our social media channels. With that, have a great week, and God bless, and thanks for listening.